Justin, you're probably okay to get started, and I'll just keep letting people in as they arrive.
All right. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining work group meeting number 2 on the rate setting. Appreciate everyone's time today. And I will turn it over to David from the Guidehouse team, who's going to walk us through the first handful of slides. David, are you here? I know he's here.
David, you are muted.
I'm there. I am. I apologize. So sorry. I'm so used to working with Teams that when it's Zoom, I have to refigure out what I'm looking at. So sorry. So thank you, Justin. Let's jump to the next slide.
Okay.
So very much similar format to what we did in our first meeting, except we're not going to go over why we're here. We're going to just update where we are on our meeting schedule, and then we're going to review your input from the first meeting, and then we have, like we did in the first meeting, we have 4 questions that we'd like to get additional input from you there. So, and we have an hour together. So and the first session was quite productive. So let's dig right in. Next slide. So just bring us up to speed. We had our first meeting on March 13th, where we talked about basically why we're here, basic rate discussion, and some APMs. And today we want to talk about direct, indirect, and capital costs. We also have some additional questions, or additional question, excuse me, that we want to elicit input from. And then, as you can see, we have 3 more meetings scheduled heading out through the end of May. Next slide. Okay, so what we thought we'd do is just do a quick run through of the kind of feedback we heard in the first meeting. What we've done here over the next 3 slides is we've grouped together your comments in a series of topics and themes, right? So in the first one, we have your input on capital costs. We have and then on this page we also have operating costs. So let's pause a moment, and if I'm not going to read all these bullets to you. I think it's important, however, to convey that we heard you, and we are in the listening stage of this project. So in addition to just writing this information down and capturing it, some key points, and we're going to do a little bit of a deeper dive on some of these key points through additional questions. But we have we're definitely pulling this information into the process. But if anyone, I'm going to pause here, and if anyone wants to raise their hand and has any questions about this, we have a couple of minutes here, so we can take some input or some questions on this.
I have a question.
Okay.
I should say a comment.
Please
regarding obtaining funding for capital improvements. The typical source of funding is a bank. And when you go to a bank to borrow money for improvements, the bank's primary motive is to get paid back with interest. And so they're looking for the borrower to be financially strong. And if our payment system, basically, if you do everything perfect, you break even, there's no profit, there's no return on equity, there is nothing to add to a financial bottom line, then the banks are very reluctant to lend you any money.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the main obstacles in obtaining capital for improvements is the financial weakness of the industry.
Okay, so I would just summarize that as access to capital is a challenge given the financial weakness.
Yes, because in part because the system makes it impossible, or the system is designed to never allow the operator to make a profit.
Noted. Thank you.
And that operator will invest literally millions of dollars just for cash flow, let alone acquiring a facility, but just for cash flow to meet payroll and monthly bills while waiting, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 weeks to get reimbursed from Medicare or Medicaid. And there's no compensation to an owner operator to put a couple $1 million in the checkbook to open the doors, because
Got it.
there's no
Got
reward.
it. I appreciate that, Phil. Appreciate that comment. Any others? Because we do have to keep moving through these slides, but
Yeah, David,
yeah.
this is Mike Tyler.
Yes, Mike.
Under the second operating cost, second bullet, providers are currently
Yeah,
disincentivized
say
to operate
something
below.
about that.
Pardon?
I say, go ahead. Yeah.
So that bullet, I don't understand, nor do I think it's correct. I mean, there's certainly no disincentives in place to operate in a way that costs less money.
Mhm.
To the extent that we can operate and reduce expense, that provides an opportunity for margin on other payers that are margin payers, such as Medicare, insurances, private pay. So I guess I don't understand that bullet as it's written.
No, that's a great comment, and I just convey to the group, these bullets were taken verbatim from that meeting. So we didn't write any of these. We just copied, but if you recall, people put comments in the chat and we copied and pasted them right in. So this was a comment from a colleague, Mike. But your question is noted.
Thank you.
Justin, would you like to move to the next slide, Wade? So here again are, some additional categories on things like adjustments, of which there are some already. And then, this topic of trend and inflation, and how that will be incorporated, or how that could be or should be incorporated into the rate development. Again, I will give folks a couple of minutes just to quickly scan and then open the floor up to comments. And especially if there are folks here who contributed some of these comments, if you want to sort of say more, that's also appreciated as well. Okay.
I'd just like, if I
Go ahead,
could
Phil.
add one
Yep.
minor thing, the fact that the fact that minimum wage is now tied to the CPI every January 1st, then that automatically requires that any annual inflation nursing homes receive be equal or greater to the same CPI that is increasing minimum wage, because 80% of our labor, 80% of our cost is labor.
That's true. That's true. And of course, at the minimum wage level in Maine, you have quadruple A, which requires 125% of minimum wage, and which will of course be part of any rate development. But yes, and that's something we're going to talk a little bit more about as we get into one of the questions is, we recognize that labor, especially clinical labor, is a significant, is the major part of direct care costs, and and you're challenged, to cover those rates. So we're going to ask for some feedback there. But thanks for the comment, Phil. Others?
Hi, this is Wanda. I would add
Hey, Wanda.
that, again, with the CPI index, the current index doesn't very well track what actually is experienced in terms of the actual inflation.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, I don't think that methodology that we have now does a very good job predicting how our costs change. So that's an
It-
opportunity for improvement.
Is there an index that you've seen before? And I'm not trying to sort of put you on the spot, but is there an index that you've said, yeah, that seems to track more closely with what we're actually seeing, you know? And I'm not sure if your association
No,
or
I
something.
mean, that's a terrific question, and no, we haven't hit the magic bullet on that. I think what
Okay.
has worked for us is these periodic rebasings that allow then for cost to adjust to kind of keep pace in these intervening years. So maybe the first year, second year, the CPI doesn't trend well with what our actual costs are, how our actual costs are changing, but eventually we get a rebasing moment, so we get to true that up.
Sure.
That's true on the nursing facility side. That is not true on the residential care side. So that should be noted.
So, you know, that's true. And that's actually, I'm glad you just raised that, because of course we're cognizant is we have two groups here, right? We have folks who represent the nursing facility and those who represent the residential care facilities too. And while there are some similarities in the methods, you just pointed out a key difference right there is when they were last rebased, you know? So that, you know, that is definitely a noted point.
And the last time we have had a routine component rate adjustment on the res care side. And it's been a long time since those costs were considered. And if you look at our rate letters today, there's a lot of providers who have a negative routine component rate, which makes no sense at all.
Noted.
The other thing that I would mention under the adjustment section, and this speaks to the nursing facility rebasing, the way the upper payment limits are derived, it's based on 110% of statewide medians. And with work that we have done with Tammy Bernetti from Barry Dunn and her team, they've identified that 130% would be a better measure to capture most facilities' allowable costs on these rebasing moments. So again, it's an opportunity to.
So actually on that one, Wanda, let's put a pin in that one, because I think our first question actually is, what would you do differently over the, you know, for the 110? So you're clairvoyant. You've seen my slide deck in advance.
Yeah,
So
the work that we have done shows that those that are operating above the 130% median are typically outliers in the industry. So I
Great.
think that change by itself would be a welcome.
hold that thought. We'll be back. I'll be back to you.
Yeah.
So Justin, next slide. And then this is our last group of comments that we took from the first meeting. There was some feedback on risk adjustment, which of course is and will continue to be part of both methodologies, although different. You know, nursing facility currently uses RUGs and you know, may or may not move to PDPM or something else. And of course, the RCF has its own risk methodology. And then, you know, the last were just sort of a general, S group is just a general category of rates, approach, program, future, and other. Take a look, see if there's anything you see there. Again, if you were the one who offered up that comment, that's great. Thank you very much. But if you have more information if there's anything you want to say about that, you know, this is an opportunity.
This is Dave Dill. Can I just say, through these slides, maybe I missed it. I didn't see anything where we were trying to raise the issue about temp agencies and the costs associated with that. That's a pretty big deal, and it seems like we didn't capture that here.
So again, Dave, these were the comments that people had offered up in our first meeting. You know, we will, you know, as I said, we do have a question that, if not directly, is tangentially associated with the labor costs. And so you'll have an opportunity to put that forth. And as I said a moment ago, we're very, very cognizant of the fact that labor is not only a significant part of, if not the key part of direct care, but the challenges you all face on an hourly basis, both from contract, traveler, or temp folks. So, you know,
And
again,
actually,
I'm gonna go ahead.
David, I believe if you go back 2 slides, I believe one of the bullets mentioned under the direct care. Yeah, agency staffing expenses.
Okay,
Yep.
sorry. Thank you.
And also just note that it is posted to the main website, the first presentation with everyone's comments. So we have every comment included in there. And then these are just kind of a summary of those, but we have certainly reviewed and are taking into consideration every comment that was raised, not just some of these sample and themes here.
Great, thanks, Justin. All right. Any other thoughts or contributions on this last slide?
David, just to go back about the labor component,
Yes,
what
Rick.
Phil brought up in Wanda. You are aware of the compression issue with the minimum wage. And basically the compression is a matter of, as minimum wage goes up, those staffing that got paid a premium a little bit better, it's the compression that's happening where you have a nursing aide that's being hired is now being hired at $15 an hour, and you have staff that have been in the building for 5 years and are making $16.50. So the compression issue is a matter of, you have to pay those people who are, you know, actively better employees. We hope the new staff is good, but that compression is hurting us both within the industry, causing for higher inflation, and outside of the industry, giving some of these CNAs, the backbone of our industry, the ability to make close to a comparable rate at Walmart, Target, McDonald's. So this industry, where I do agree, you know, a living wage is necessary for America, this industry is kind of getting hurt because it's the staff that we work with that was getting a little bit above a minimum wage. It's almost like they require that $4 to $6 differential to keep them happy and keep them employed.
So let me play that back, Rick, and see if I have that. So the issue is, as new staff is hired at the new prevailing rate, that is putting pressure on existing, more experienced staff. So then you have to go ahead and either increase the existing staff's rate to keep them, you know, reflecting their experience and their what they contribute to the organization, or you risk losing them. Am I capturing that correctly?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Great. I know
Okay. We also risk losing them because the nursing aide position is a very, you know, sensitive, difficult, work-intensive position. They're on their feet there all day. They're hustling.
Yes.
And this minimum wage, what we've done federally, and the move to $15 a day, unfortunately, I think is hurting the long-term care industry in all states.
Because it's putting you on the defensive, in my words, you know, defensive relative to competing sort of where else these folks might find a couple of more dollars an hour, and as you put it, you know, Walmart or McDonald's or something like that. Right. And you know, and I imagine, you know, good CNA staff takes a while to get them to where they are, and so you just don't want to lose them. Okay, great. Well, I appreciate folks' feedback on these slides. It's again, what we're going to do the same thing in this next session. We're going to write down everything, all your comments. It will also be posted on MaineCare's website, and we will continue with this cycle. So hopefully this is working for folks. Make sure, you know, the takeaway message is we want to convey that we are hearing you. You know, this is a learning process as we continue on and move, you know, through this information gathering stage, and then move into the next stage where we start considering different rate options. You know, not every idea is going to be captured, but at least you know that we have heard it. So we thought it would be helpful in this next section just to put up some, you know, I wouldn't call these definitions, because everyone might have a slight variation in terms of what they are. It's more of a level setting. So the purpose of this slide is not to sort of ask for input or people's thoughts on the different how we're categorizing or defining these basic categories. It's just a level set So when we talk about things like direct care, routine or indirect, fixed or capital, and then in the case of the RCS, they have the personal care services, that we're on the same page. You know, as I say, I'm certain if I were to poll any one of you, you would have variations on these, and that's fine. You know, but I think we've captured here the generally accepted view of what each of these categories covers. Again, plus or minus some variation. It's really just so that we're speaking the same language. We have a common theme when we talk about direct, what's involved in there. Again, routine or indirect, fixed or capital, and the personal care services. So I'm not going to belabor this slide. I'll just give you a few seconds just to read it. You know, I'm sure you're all. I don't have to tell any of you what these components are, but it's just for us to be on the same page.
David, this is Glenn Sear, Vice
Yes,
President of Finance for North Country Associates. Under fixed, could you please add workers' comp insurance? I know you have property and it says insurance, but if you could include property insurance and workers' comp insurance, that's a big expense. And I know the other issue is under direct care costs, you're saying salary and wages. I just want to be clear so that you agree is that in our industry, we use the word direct care or direct costs very specifically for nursing. And when in your slide, it says direct costs, again, that's salaries. I just want to be clear. That includes all departments, housekeeping, laundry, dietary, maintenance, administration, office, you know, we're getting pressed and it's very difficult to find staff for those departments as well. It's not just the direct care nurses that we have in our facility. So I just want to make sure I make that clear.
No, I appreciate that feedback.
David, under fixed cost, the last two items, water and sewer fees. Water and sewer are not fixed. They're part of routine.
Okay. We can make that change. Okay, indirect. And our source for this just was the state sections of policy that cover this. But this is, you know, this is helpful. So so water and sewer, you said are in indirect or in routine.
They're in routine for nursing. I'm not familiar with residential care.
For nursing. Okay. All righty.
They are fixed in residential care world.
It's in, you just, Wanda, you said it's in fixed for the RCFs?
It's a fixed cost in RCS, yes.
But not in NF.
Right.
So there's a difference.
Yes. Yes. No, as I say, you know, as I mentioned a moment ago, we're cognizant we have two groups here. We have two methodologies here, and we're not in any way trying to say that they are the same thing, nor are we creating one rate for both services. I mean, if in any case that some folks were thinking that, it's just for efficiency purposes that we are working with both groups simultaneously, but completely cognizant and recognizing the differences between your two facility types and the differences in how you are paid today, and potentially, you know, the differences that will be maintained going forward in future methodology. So, you know, the only blending is in the purposes of these meetings. Now, that to say, if there are common elements that, you know, folks agree that maybe, you know, there are commonalities, we'll explore that. But I don't want folks to think that we see them as the same. They're not. We recognize that, you know. So it was purely for the efficiency of bringing the groups together and talking about it, because a lot of the issues, while the methodologies may differ, you have common issues, right? You have common concerns. So we want to make sure we capture that. But I just wanted to make that statement. All right, why don't we jump
David? David, I would just add one little caveat to that, which is where it makes sense for it to be the same, we would consider that, because it is essentially the same,
Right,
not entirely, but the same industry that's operating both.
right, absolutely, Paul. You know, in other words, I mean, you know, where there are common themes, we'll treat like with like. You know, so yes, absolutely. So let's jump to the next slide. So here are the 4 questions that we're going to have. We're going to take each one in order. So I just put them up here. But what we're going to be talking about is the indirect and routine care for nursing facilities, and you know how today it's capped at the 110%. Wanda, this is going to be your opportunity. So get ready. You know, and then suggestions for suggestions to deal with some of the unexpected high cost. And what I mean by that are some of the things like dealing with labor inflation. And I know we know you've been hit with unexpected utility costs, right? I mean, that's spiked, you know, and we're also going to be talking a little bit about, you know, how you think, today the nursing facility rate is largely retrospective, right? I mean, there's a cost settlement, and there's a, for the indirect and direct, and capital is more or less a pass through. There's a prospective component to the RCFs, but we'd like your input on basically prospective versus retrospective. And then lastly, the last question we need, because one of the feedback items we did hear from you is, as you know, groups are used for a number of ways within both methodologies, whether it be groups on the RCF side for your risk adjustment, whether it be peer groups for setting other medians. So someone had made the comment that they felt the groups were, for lack of a better term, outdated. So this is going to be an opportunity for folks to talk about that. So these are the 4 questions, and now let's jump into the first one. All right. So the way we're going to work this is exactly how we did before. I'll just reread the question, and then if people want to use the chat function and write your comments in the chat, and then we will capture from the chat. Hopefully, Justin will be able to do that, and we'll paste them in. Again, remember the chat is stored after the meeting, so if for some reason your comment doesn't get grabbed and posted up here, there's nothing selective about it. We want to get your words verbatim in our post-it notes here. So, and we'll give you time to do that. So again, we have 4.
Similar to last time, if you can please enter your question in the chat, I will copy it and paste it into these notepads in real time. And then of course, we'll provide kind of the updated version of the presentation with everyone's comments, but we'll give everyone time to include a question, and then as they come in, I will copy and paste.
Great. So the first question we're starting with, as I mentioned a moment ago, indirect and routine costs for nursing facilities are capped at the lesser of actual cost of the provider or the statewide 110% median, and capital as a pass-through. What changes would you make to this methodology? We have 9 minutes for this question. I know it sounds random, but by all means, and this is where you need the Jeopardy music.
No, David, I would strongly encourage we get this slide deck a day before we have this meeting. This is like a pop quiz. I feel like I'm back in school.
Oh dear. Well, Rick, you're not in school, so.
Yeah, not to belabor Rick's point, and I know we have 9 minutes, so people type away while I talk. Particularly because MHCA has a lot of thoughts about raising the median from 110% to 130%, and we've done some data crunching on that. So I think that's really important. The other piece, though, that Rick was saying about having at least an agenda in advance would be really helpful, because I do think it's kind of hard to respond to some of these things on the fly, David. And sometimes I go home and I'm like, oh, I should have said this, right?
Well, here's concession, and I apologize for not getting this out in advance, but at the end of the deck we have contact information, and we just because we end this session in the time we have allotted, by all means, we're gonna this deck is going to be made available, and so please continue to provide feedback. It's not a one and done. I don't want people to get the impression that that's what we're doing. So Angela or anyone else, if you have an epiphany late at night or, the next day, by all means, send that in and we'll capture it. Why don't we say, we'll give people to the end of the week, because what we'll do is we'll, again, like we did, and continue writing while I'm talking, we're going to summarize, we're going to put, post your comments. But you have a couple of days to do it. So don't think that if you, and Rick, don't think you're under pressure. And if you say, I'm just going to think about it, go ahead and think about it. This is excellent. We're getting some good feedback. Thank you. Couple more minutes. Very interesting. All right, and folks can continue to keep writing, but I'd like to just sort of do a little bit of a deeper dive into some of these comments, and get a little additional color if folks. But I don't want to interrupt you. You can absolutely continue to write. Right. So I saw that. I think Angela, you put that you have the association has some data on going from 110 to 130. Presumably that's something you can share with the main care team.
I believe so. Yes.
Great. We'd love to see that. Let's see. Make it so we have someone wrote that they like prospective. Whoever wrote that, could you say a little bit more about your thoughts on prospective again, clearly against retrospective? Let's see who wrote that.
Was that the number 3
Yeah.
that you're talking about?
Yeah.
I think that was me.
Okay, great, Tammy.
I mean, the retrospective settlement provides a lot of variability to providers' financial statements. Banks don't like it. Operators don't like it, provide a rate and allow facilities to make decisions based on that rate. And, the retrospective nature of these settlements, provide a degree of risk to financial statements, and also can significantly impact cash flow, either way, during the year and at settlement time. So it's burdensome on the providers, and I would say on the department as well.
So prospective gives, to some, play that back to you, gives predictability.
Yeah.
And retrospective, while there might be a settlement, that's all well and good, but that doesn't help you because you don't know what it's going to be.
Mm-hmm. Right, but with that prospective rate, there needs to be frequent adjustments for inflation and rebasing and variability of costs built into the system, right?
When you say frequent, I mean, it wouldn't be intra-year. It wouldn't be during the year. It would be periodic, whether it be annual, every biannual, 3 years, whatever main care was, this chooses to do. But I just want to make sure, or are you saying you'd like to see it updated throughout the year?
I guess it depends on what's happening in the industry. Last year it would have been great to have something more frequent because of the sort of the wage and labor crisis that's ongoing. But
got it. And I'm going to put you in the same spot as I did Wanda before. We have a question on that, coming up. So hold your thought, but I want to hear your thoughts at that time. Let's see. Yes, Bill.
Yeah, regarding Tammy's point about prospective versus retrospective, I'm going to provide a good example, and that is every time a nursing facility has had a COVID outbreak, we get an extra $23 a day for the period of time that we are in the outbreak. And then Medicaid audit comes behind and wants us to produce hours and hours of work to show, did we in fact spend $23 more because of the COVID outbreak we were in? Or did we spend only $22.75 and we have to return the 25 cents that didn't get spent? That right there is a perfect example where utilities spend a ton of time documenting our nickels and dimes to the audit department. If they're going to give us $23 for increased cost, then give us the $23 and move on. Don't try and recapture it a year or two later.
Understood. So let me play that a little bit back to you. So you're saying when you think about retrospective, and one additional element, there's a cost to the audit process, not just giving back the 25 cents, which I hear you on that, but there's a cost to the audit process of demonstrating, sort of your actual expenses above and beyond what you might put on a cost report. In other words, and only to be nicked the 25 cents.
Yes.
Okay. So there's a cost.
And it's not only a cost to the facility operator who has to fulfill all these paperwork, it's a cost to the audit department who are going to have, a number of accountant people spending hours and hours looking to see if they can deny $500 here or $500 there.
Great. No, that's a super comment.
David, we should move on to.
Right. I know I'm looking at the time. I just want to. Okay. All right. Let's jump to the next question. Thank you for your input on that. Okay. And here we go. And so we're on with this question. What suggestions would you make to deal with unexpected high cost trends? In the example, wages. And then, again, please put your comments in the chat box. And let's be clear, what we're not looking for you to say, that you have high cost wages, because we're aware of that. We're aware of the costs you have associated with temporary and traveler expense, or for that matter, utilities. Here, switch back, Justin.
Yeah, I got one more comment. So.
But what we're looking to is how would this be dealt with? Because in particular, one of the things is that as we come out of this post-COVID period, I think what generally we're seeing nationwide, and I'll just share a little bit with this, is while we don't necessarily expect your perm costs, your hourly costs to come down. In other words, I think that what you're paying folks today is what you're going to pay them tomorrow, plus as inflation goes. However, what we would like to hear about is, are you seeing any change in the ratio of perm to temp? In other words, are you finding that your percent of temp is stable and looks like it might be stable, so therefore your costs are going to remain at that high blended rate? Or are you seeing, are you seeing some of the perm to temp change, and so the perm rate becomes more dominant when you average them together? And then the other thing, as I said, is not just wages. I know we dealt with some high cost utility costs, which you're heating a facility, you're cooling a facility. So
Now, I'd also just add, we are, as I think work group meeting 4, doing a specific trend and inflation discussion, walking through our methodology. So if there's anything that you'd like to hear more about or make sure that we cover as part of that 4th work group meeting, we'd be happy to hear about that today as well.
right, our experts are coming in for that meeting.
So David, this is Mike Tyler again. Your point you just raised, we are not seeing any kind of decrease in the usage of agency and traveler staff.
Really?
In fact, it's probably at its highest level that we've seen it.
Really? So even at the height of COVID in the mid-21?
Yes. I think the point that's really important that everyone is hoping, post-COVID, that things will start to move back to what it might have been before. We are seeing none of that. Okay. The folks that have left, because of a lot of different reasons, vaccine mandates, other kinds of things, they are not coming back into this business. So there is others can chime in, but in the many facilities that I'm associated with throughout the state, every region, we are not seeing a positive change at all.
Let me ask you this, Mike. Are you seeing folks who were perm leaving and coming back as contract people?
Absolutely.
To get the higher wage? I mean, is that
absolutely?
Is that onesie twosie or is that prevalent?
No, that's significant.
Yeah.
Okay. And it is, there is a mix. There are true travelers that we are hiring that are from Iowa, Nebraska, and Oklahoma. And then there are other folks that are now doing 16 and 26-week contracts that are live in Brewer and are now taking a job in Belfast, which is 18 miles away.
So let me ask you this, and I want to have to keep the ball rolling here along. Is are you hiring perm? Are you hiring agency and temp staff because you can't find perm folks? And
there are absolutely the reason that the occupancy levels in the state of Maine are at 80%-ish is that we cannot staff the beds.
Got it.
Yeah.
So,
and that's everywhere. There's some exceptions. And the one facility that I have that's nearly 100% occupied, we have an inordinate amount of agency. And frankly, we're losing our shirts. How long we can sustain this and take folks out of the hospital to help their situation is definitely up in the air.
Got it. One of the things that we've seen in other states, because let's be clear, you're not alone. And I mean, I'm sure you're aware of what's going on nationwide. So this is not a unique issue. One of the things that we've seen in some states is an effort to try to basically, grow staff organically. In other words, create for the state to help create an opportunity to help encourage folks who aren't CNAs today to go into training to become a CNA and, sort of bring more fresh blood into the industry. People, because the CNA program is obtainable, assuming that, there is funding for it. We have seen states and industries work it from that perspective.
David, one thing to keep in mind is the age of the demographics in Maine. We are the oldest state or the second oldest state in the country.
Yes.
We do not have the young labor force to replace those that have left. It's just not. It's just not a realistic approach to be looking at just that. We certainly need to look at in migration and other things, but our demographics are such that the population just isn't there.
Interesting. I mean,
Numerous people on this call are doing all kinds of CNA med tech classes.
Yeah,
Everyone here that's an operator is doing this and paying for it in a lot of cases. So
got it.
that's happening now. There just are not enough people that want to become CNAs, med techs, res care aides to even come close to filling what we need.
David, in the community colleges in Maine, what's happening is they're giving free tuition for individuals who want to become LPNs in a year or RNs. And
Wow.
all of that is happening very rapidly in our state. The problem is that we had over 6,000 RNs in the state of Maine that retired when COVID hit. And the backfill of RNs that are coming out of school are luckily to be even a third of that. And the pressures for RNs and LPNs especially are that the hospitals are the ones that are going to be acquiring those people once they graduate. They're not entering our field. So our pressure for nursing agency is even more. It's not less. So I just want you to know that it goes back to Tammy's comments and Michael's comments, and I know everyone else on this call would say the same thing, is we do not have the labor support of the state. So the only thing we can rely on is agency, and agencies are driving the bus. They're giving day shifts to staff because they don't want to work nights and weekends. If people want to work for us, they're very reluctant to work for us because they don't want to work nights and weekends. As you know, we're a 24/7, 365 operation. So the pressure of labor has been tilted in a direction that is not sustainable to go back to a normal operation, regardless of COVID. We are in this for the long haul, and there has to be a commitment financially to support it, because it will not support itself, period. This industry cannot support itself.
Got it, Glenn. Thank you. I very, very much appreciate that. In the interest of time, go ahead. One more
Sorry.
comment.
Hi.
Hold on.
David, Gabrielle Herbig here. I just wanted to
Gabrielle.
mention, I currently sit on the workforce committee for Maine Healthcare Association.
Super.
And all of the things that have been mentioned are certainly in the works. And just recently this week from the Department of Labor, we received a report that there's a direct care worker campaign, which is funded with $3.5 million. And we received 300 individuals to submit interest. That's not really a great turnaround if you look at the numbers. And a healthcare workforce attraction campaign with a $2.5 million budget brought in 700 applicants. So we do have some force out there, but the numbers still are not tracking in a solid direction.
That's helpful. That's helpful. All right, in the interest of time, let's jump to the next one. But I really need to thank you all. I mean, we are getting some great feedback, and we're not only writing it down there, but I'm capturing your color as we ride along. So let's jump into this third question. Maine Care is considering setting some of the rates prospective versus retrospective. We talked about that a little bit. What are some of the considerations? And I think we heard a lot of that. When we first put this question up, we heard some feedback on prospective versus retrospective, not the least of which was in prospective you get predictability, and we heard that the retrospective audits, there's a cost to them, and some of the issues about the process that goes through. But if there's anything else you want to put forward on prospective versus retrospectives, excuse me. And more importantly, in other words, because each of the two facility type rates are made up of 3 or so buckets, it's not necessarily all buckets have to be done the same way. So you may say, I really think I think direct and indirect or routine should be prospective, but capital needs to be a pass through. Or in fact, in the previous slide, we didn't get to talk about it. I heard somebody put in for capital using basically what's referred to as fair rental value. That which is a different method of setting the capital rate than what is done today. And we won't spend a lot of time on that at the moment, but that's an alternate methodology to what is done in today's policy regs. So
David, the other thing is, since we only have 9 minutes left, but we've got 2 questions that are allotted for 8.5 minutes each, so we don't have time for both, I would suggest we also put the last question up so
Yeah.
that it doesn't get short shrift. And then, you know, people can just put in responses about both questions and, you know, we'll be able to post them in from the chat. But that's a really important question, this last one.
It is, and since we did touch a little bit on number 3, so let's read number 4 here. So again, we spoke about that a moment ago, but what data or other facility characteristics should Maine consider when looking to redefine peer groups? Again, for context, you know, several individuals had mentioned that the peer groups that are used in different ways for each different facility type may not be current, may not be the best. So we'd love to hear, you know, bearing in mind that as peer groups are used, you know, differently. And so, and for that matter, how would you like those peer groups used? In other words, you know, would you like, for example, the median cost to be peer group set, and, you know, and how would you define that peer group? Again, we know in RCF, the risk adjustment is peer group method, but so in your comment, put, you know, this is how you might classify peer groups, and this is how I'd like it to be used. And as I said before, just because you don't see us capture your comment, the comments stay in the chat. So we will capture it. It's not lost.
I think we're getting all of them, but after the call, since we're doing 2 questions, I will revisit to make sure I'm capturing them in the right question. But for time today, I'm just going to put them all in this bucket.
Okay, yeah, just make it easy. And then we'll divvy them up. This group has been prolific. Thank you so much. We appreciate not only your time, but your contribution.
And Angela, to your point about can the meetings be scheduled for longer? That is probably a tall order given folks' availability, but what we can do, it's sort of dawning on us that yeah, if we send these questions out a week beforehand, you can put them all together, you know, and then we lead off the call saying, here's what we collected, now let's talk about it. So that would be a more efficient use of everybody's time, both in terms of you having time to put things together and then having adequate time to discuss. So thanks to everybody who made those suggestions.
While people are putting the comments in, I'm just curious if someone could elaborate on number 10, a climate-related peer group. Say more if you could.
David, I threw that in because our heating costs in Aroostook County are significantly more than Southern Maine, as well as our snow removal costs are considerably more, but yet those routine costs to us fall into the same routine cap that the entire state of Maine stays within.
Understood. So would a geography adjustment, or would a geography peer group, in other words, groups within Aroostook County or whatever sort of measure, you know, is appropriate, would that capture what your concerns are?
Yes, because as I said, I mean, our snow removal costs are significant as well as our heating costs are significant.
I can understand that, you know, versus maybe someone who's on the ocean in Southern Maine might be a little bit different.
Now, on the flip side, our air conditioning costs are a little less.
Does it offset?
But that would be a difference between the electric meter spinning versus the propane or oil delivery truck backing up to the door. But snow removal, though, is not a utility per se, but it is a definite expense.
And this is just an aside, and maybe I'll just ask you, Phil, in your experience, your knowledge, and to the extent you're familiar with others, what is the predominant heating source? Is it natural gas or is it oil?
First of all, there is no natural gas north of Bangor,
Okay.
unless you truck it in, which is
Okay.
quite expensive. And at our facilities, we use propane.
Okay.
Because that gives us the most BTUs per dollar. Most of our heat plants burn both heating oil or propane, and we flip back and forth depending upon what is the cost.
Got it. Interesting. So you do have the flexibility.
Yes, we do.
All right, let's see. Well, we have just about 3 minutes left. You might as well use every minute. And again, I just want to reiterate, if you don't feel pressure, pressure, by all means. I think the last slide, we have contact information. If we don't, we'll definitely, it was on the earlier one.
So I will jump to that slide as we're running out. So we will post this, or the main will post this with everyone's comments included. And we did include a question and comments here. So yeah, absolutely. If anything else comes up that you want to comment or ask questions about, I've included Brian and myself's email address in here. Feel free to reach out to us and we'll make sure that it's accounted for.
Yeah, so why don't you leave this slide up for a couple of minutes so people can write down the email just easier.
David, this is Mike Tyler with one last parting point.
Yes, Mike.
Everything we're working here on to try to, get our occupancies up and be viable, it has a massive impact on acute care. Okay, the acute care setting is being so impacted by our inability to take residents. There are significant patients backed up in the acute care settings throughout the state. And not allowing those hospitals to do their work to the extent we can't be full because we can't hire staff, okay, is affecting the healthcare system throughout the entire state.
Yes.
So, I just don't want anyone to lose sight of how important it is, not just for our businesses and our residents, but everything's affected. If we don't get this thing straightened out, it is going to be a giant mess.
That connectivity, Mike, is an excellent point. We appreciate you bringing that up. All right, we have just one minute left. So again, we appreciate everyone contributing to the conversation, to the discussion. I think it was fruitful and productive. As Justin has said, we will be posting this. We'll be posting this on MaineCare's website, and we will next time we will bring this information in. And per Peter's comment, what we will try to do for our next set of questions is get them to you in advance. In fact, we'll probably we'll include the summary here so you can see what you said, and then we can give you a better opportunity to participate. But I have to don't sell yourself short. You all did a great job, and you provided a lot of good information, not only to the Guidehouse team, but to the MaineCare team as well. So with that, we're at time, so I appreciate it. And thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.